Hi, my name is Philip. I'm part of the Phil team, and today I will be explaining what this smart contract is, and how it can be applied to be used for data onboarding. My talk will be really quick, just like Hero's. First, I'll give a rough overview of rationale behind and the design and architecture of the Bounty Smart Contract. Then where it'll be applied, and then limitations and how you can contribute to the smart contract development. So a bit of the rationale here is that, as we all know, FEVM launched about 3 months ago. It was a pretty big launch. It's really similar. It offers EVM smart contract functionality, so you can write Solidity smart contracts on it. But the unique thing about FEVM that is different from other EVM on other blockchains is that you have access to the deal storage market. So you can actually write like business logic or transaction logic that triggers or accesses information from on-chain, so like deal state. So which is why we wrote this bounty contract. So this flow happens after all the deal making has happened. So it can be deal making through anything like Spade, Banyan, D-Store, whatever. But this is about payment. So how it works is that there's a sponsor and a destination wallet. The sponsor is the person paying the funds. The destination wallet is the person receiving the funds. So you can think of it as client and SP. This sponsor will first create a bounty. So he or she would create specify the bounty. In this specification, you need 3 different things. First, you just need to tell the bounty what CID or what file that they want to be stored. Second is which SPs are allowed to store this, so kind of like an eligibility list. Interesting thing about these eligibility lists is that once you create one list of SPs, you can reuse that list of SPs. You can also combine it with other lists of SPs. So you can specify which SPs can store is eligible for this bounty. And then third, it is how much funds are you going to put into this bounty. So like how much fill or really any ERC20 token you would put into this. So you can also pay in Ethereum or any other token. So to recap, sponsor has to specify CID, the file which is right now CID specified, the SPs who can store this file, and then how much do they get for storing this file. And then once it's on the bounty contract, it's permanently there. They can set an expiry date, of course, and also like there's other smaller specifications you can put in, but those are the main 3. Once it's there, the storage provider can then come in and prove that they have stored with their miner address stored the CID or made a deal with the CID to the bounty contract. And once that happens, the bounty contract simply checks the storage market actor, which again is unique to the Filecoin ecosystem, FEVM. Once it checks, if it passes, it will send it to the destination wallet, which also could be the storage provider. It's just an option for the storage provider to have a separate wallet to receive all their funds from the clients. And again, one small thing is that the sponsor, if no one wants to take their bounty, they can just kind of like take their funds back. Or if they decide that, oh wait, actually never mind, I don't want this file to be stored, they can take it back. So the nice thing about this design is that it can happen asynchronously to the deal-making process. So it makes sure that the storage provider has stored the deal first before they can take the funds. And that's 1. And 2, most of the work is done by the storage provider. So once the client puts in the funds and specifies everything, it's kind of like any storage provider can come in and take those funds as long as they have stored that CID, which is great, right? Less pain on the client. So this is that. This flow all happens usually after or asynchronously to the deal making process. Now we'll talk about where it will be applied. So
I would argue that you'd probably set this up before, though, right? Because what you would do is like figure out how you want your data to be stored, but the data itself may only be stored because it's like a prepaid escrow, effectively.
Yes. So you can do it before, or if you want to do it really informally, you can technically do it after too. Like you just promise the SP that like I'm gonna make this bounty to pay you tomorrow.
But the upside of the smart contract is you don't have to promise. You've locked the funds.
Yeah, you're locked in. You can say like, hey, here's the bounty that I put. This is the fund that I've dedicated. You can take it from here if you wanted to. So a few things, applications where this can work. For any onboarding tool, like Spade, dStore, Banyan, it works with everything. It's agnostic to all of that. It works on the smart contract. Clients can, what Deep said before, post a bounty. And then once the deal is made, you can specify which SP can take this payment, and then they can take the payment. Or you can also specify like which group of SPs can take the payment too. Another one is like for data DAO purposes. Let's say you create a consortium of people that love your grandma, so they want to store your grandma's cat photos. Then you would create a data DAO, and this data DAO can just create a bounty on the smart contract. And that is an incentive for anyone to preserve those cat pictures, right? So, which is great, because it can be used for incentive purposes too. Like anyone in data DAO can just point to this bounty contract and say like, hey, here are our funds. You can contribute to this more if you want. And yeah, so those are two great applications. Of course, this is still pretty nascent, so there are a lot of limitations to this. First biggest limitation is that it's on the smart contracts. It's on the FVM. So that means that gas fees are really high for anyone calling it. So both the client when they want to create the bounty and SP when they want to collect the bounty. There are gas fee limitations. One possible way around it is we could use the IPC subnet developments that they are talking about in the other track. There is also a possibility that we can just create a complete off-chain version with the similar logic. That could also be possible, but obviously that could take away the benefits of using having everything tracked on chain. So that's one. Two, there's still some limitations with how much you can specify in the bounty creation. So most of the times, people want groups of CIDs to be stored by groups of SPs. And currently, every SP ID and CID pair needs one bounty contract, so which is not really convenient. That's a lot of bounty creation, which is a lot of gas spent, right? So if you have M CIDs and N SPIDs, you need MN times the number of bounty contracts, which is not great. In the future, this can be improved. One limitation that I did not list here too is what happens after the funds are transferred. So for example, what if the sponsor or the client wants to ensure that the file being stored is retrievable and all this and maintained after they prove it for the first time that they have stored it? We can't do that yet. So that's another limitation. Yeah, but this is I think a great start. It's nice because it's also agnostic to all the chains. That's a benefit, and it's tracked on chain. So many use cases for this in the future. So yeah, how you guys can contribute. This is a joint project between data programs and equity labs. We are basically finished with development. We're testing it now on production. We will build a UI soon and would probably be able to announce it in Istanbul. This is the link to the spec. This is the public version of the repo. We have a private version with all the work. The public version has a spec. If you want to look at it, you can see there. And if you have any comments, you can please feel free to contribute. And yeah, please reach out to me, Philippe Pangestu on Slack, or my colleague on the Equity Lab side, who is Cameron Fife. Both contacts are there. So yeah.
Two tactical questions. Could you go back to the slide with the diagram of the storage here? Cool. Is the CID payload CID or PCID?
It is right now, I think, the PCID.
Cool.
Yeah.
And once direct data onboarding goes through, the storage market actor will need to be replaced by something else. Are you guys thinking about that?
Yes. We did not think about that. It was brought up, but we thought that the change wouldn't happen too soon.
It just got pushed out to at least Feb. So
Yeah, so we wanted something on the ground, like testing in main production first. So we just went in and tested it with this first. I mean, in the future, we can definitely do changes regarding that. And yeah, I think that's pretty important.
you could always also enforce that people that you're going to pay this way use the storage market until such time that there's a version of it that doesn't work. Yeah, I think my main point is that until we get to groupings of CIDs, probably it's going to be way too expensive.
Yeah.
And so how far away do you think we are from getting to that, or improving the structure effectively, or the spec around how you define a bounty to actually being broader?
Honestly, I think that part shouldn't be too hard. It's about just kind of generalizing the bounty specifications. There might be a bit more logic to put in. Off the top of my head, I don't see any blockers here. Could be a quick fix. The bigger problem is probably the gas. I think that's a bigger limitation here.
Have you done any modeling or math on how expensive it would be, or not yet?
Not yet, because we haven't been able to test it on mainnet for difficulties. And so, yeah, most of it's done being written and tested on local net, but not on mainnet yet.
Difficulties that are still massive blockers and constraints, or no, at this point?
At this point, no.
Cool.
I'll let you know if I have.
I think I have a question, probably not for Phil, but for the room. I think one of the things that is implicitly being tested here is the desire to pay for data storage in an opinionated way. And the opinionation is on two things, I think mainly. It's more than that, but two things mainly. One is using fill instead of fiat. A lot of SPs are still doing their math with fiat, so I'm interested to hear what thoughts are around that. And I think the second is on doing this out of band, which is a distinct approach from payment channels, for example, right? Which do this byte by byte or on a stream where directionally you have data moving and money changing hands at the same time, synchronously. Angelo, Sheena, and others that have been more deeply involved with building of software and operate SPs or understand SPs better. What are your thoughts on this? And actually, even FF, I'm kind of curious. Would you use this to incentivize SPs to onboard specific CIDs? That way you do it in a completely hands-free way. Is that compelling? Would you put up Phil for that fiat? I don't know, but I'd love to hear from the room a little bit.
Well, on the SP's perspective, I mean, fill payments, yeah, that would definitely work. I used the payment channel on True Lotus. That doesn't really work that well. So there isn't really a good implementation right now. If this works, it would be the first thing that actually works.
For paying people?
Yeah. So, right?
What about wire transfers?
I think the ERC20 support is cool. I don't know enough about the landscape, but if there are stable coins supported then...
You can do it in USDC, right, or Ethereum or anything. So really, you can almost fiat, which is USDC or token, stable coins.
Oh yeah, no, my question was, Brenda from Protocol Labs. No, my question was what motivated this development? Were there people that were hey, I'd love to be able to do some payment via smart contracts, and so you develop something, or because it's pretty cool, but I'm just trying to think about who would use it.
Phil, can I answer that question?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So this actually came out of a conversation on data DAOs with the Equity Lab team that's building a suite of tools for data DAOs, and they're very interested in chain of custody of ownership of data. And so what they want is both the ability for anybody in the world to be able to fund certain storage, regardless of whether or not you own that storage, because now you can refer to it with CIDs, so you don't actually have to be the person that produced that data. So you could just be interested in Nat Geo data being stored, right? And if you're willing to pay for it, then it shouldn't matter, as long as it's accessible data to people, or you can refer to it as CIDs, and people can go get the data to form those CIDs. Now, anybody in the world is empowered to effectively put up money to get certain work done, which is not different than like advertising like work in the world. So it's a framework for doing that completely async and in a way where DAO treasuries can be put to use for the purpose of data storage. But because then you then do it with a smart contract, you now get to see like chain of influence and chain of custody, where it's basically, hey, like this was pre-escrowed or this was pre-set aside. So you know the payment is guaranteed, so you can't fleece an SP out of it. Everybody knows upfront how they prioritize work. It brings leverage to people that are willing to pay. It puts like Phil to use, and then you have SPs that take it. So in theory, part of our team, for example, runs like Slingshot. Like we would be interested in considering this for like payments for Slingshot as like a data preservation DAO at some point in the future, potentially. I think they're working with some other projects that they would use this for as well. Phil, anything you want to add?
Yeah, it's just one thing on that is that on this picture, like there's a sponsor and destination wallet. The reason why I didn't put client and SP is because the sponsor can be separate from the client too. It can be like Deep said, completely asynchronous. It could be an investor that doesn't care about anything except putting it, like preserving this file and then putting in. There are also plans, I think, to like maybe connect this to other smart contracts, like staking contracts and so on, that could be used to kind of like create an interest payment here.
So this is Ian from FF. I think that this approach is really compelling for a couple of reasons. Mostly just that we've divorced the people who are actually preparing and uploading the data from the people who are paying for that storage, and that it's a sort of a completion-based payment as opposed to an upfront payment. And in particular, especially when you're dealing with large multi-petabyte data sets, I think it's interesting to think about setting a bounty on, the entire data set, because then that incentivizes storage providers and data preparers to collaborate with each other to make sure the full data set gets uploaded before they get paid, which I think, can lead to faster data onboarding rates and longer term preservation of specific, high impact data sets that we care about.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, but previously mentioned, the one limitation is that it's still per CID. So if you want a whole data set, there are some modifications to be made here. Yeah. But good point.
Yeah, question. Like I have two questions actually. We'll start with one. What about when the deal expires? Like, is there a way that you can use this to continue paying for your storage?
Currently, the plan is on the client to just create a new bounty. That's probably the most manual way. It could be a slightly less manual way. It could be when something expires, we could send events, and then the client could be notified to create a new bounty. There could also be a more programmatic way, in where the bounty itself could be refunded. We can re-increase the funds somehow when the deal expires. We haven't really built it out here.
I can see the wallet being filled for multiple deal durations, and then the contract will just renew it. Every 18 months in this case, or however long that is.
Yeah, it decouples it, like Deep said, it's out of bound. So exactly, that could be a benefit of it, because investor or client can just refill it and then walk away and at any time. They don't need to pay attention to when the deal expires or anything. So I think.
But again, think of what the client, the data owner actually wants, as opposed to what the SP wants.
Yeah, I'm looking at it from a client's perspective.
Right. For client, individual deals are not the thing. They never care.
Yeah. Right. Sounds good.
This is Ian from FF again.
Hello.
I just wanted to ask, so one of the things about sponsorship, right now it seems like there's one sponsor.
Yeah.
And I think one of the interesting longer term use cases for something like this is talking about collective pooling of resources to sponsor a particular bounty, so that a lot of people could contribute a small amount of money to get the bounty higher and higher and higher, and then eventually, once it gets high enough that it's profitable for SPs and data preparers to onboard a data set, that they can then execute and get the bounty contract.
Yeah, so actually one feature that I did not mention was exactly that. I said that you only need to specify 3 things. There are other things you can specify, and that's also kind of like who can sponsor a bounty contract in the first place. We can create a list of who's allowed, or it can be like a complete anyone can sponsor a bounty if they wanted to. That was also allowed. And so that functionality is actually there. Yeah, so.
Okay, quick add-on question.
All right.
This is for storing data. Is there also looked at retrieving?
Yeah, no, yeah, that's one of the limitations that are brought up just now. It's like, that's gonna be a tough one. I don't exactly, unless we can somehow bring retrieval information on chain, which is, but like, there's like a lot of stuff around bringing information on chain. That's tougher, but we need that first to get retrievability on this bounty contract.